an original story created exclusively for Golden Romance Empire. Eliza Matthews pressed her back against the cold service hallway wall, her fingers trembling as she gripped her phone, the wedding invitation, glowing like an accusation on the screen. 7 years of serving the wealthy had taught her to hide her emotions, but tonight, tears threatened to spill onto her pristine black uniform. Through the swinging doors, she could see him. The quiet stranger who always sat alone at table 19, his expensive watch peeking from beneath a deliberately modest sweater. Something about his gentle eyes made her approach him when her shift ended, desperation overriding pride. "Please," she whispered, the words burning her throat as they escaped. "Pretend you love me. Just for one night." The stranger studied her face for a long moment before his lips curved into an enigmatic smile that transformed his features, unaware that Julian Reed, billionaire owner of the very restaurant where she worked, was already falling harder than he ever had before. Eliza Matthews had always prided herself on 3 things: her work ethic, her independence, and her refusal to beg for anything, especially from men. Yet here she stood, in the dim service hallway of the Luminary, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, staring at her phone, as if it had physically wounded her. The text message glowed accusingly. "Hope you can make it to celebrate our special day. Emma insisted we invite everyone." Tyler attached was a digital invitation to Tyler Bennett and Emma Sinclair's wedding. Tyler, the man who'd promised Eliza the world before deciding she wasn't ambitious enough for his 5-year plan. The man who'd left her for a marketing executive whose family connections had fast-tracked his career at a prestigious law firm. "Matthews, table 7 needs their check," barked Sergio, the floor manager. Eliza slipped her phone into her apron pocket, squared her shoulders, and pushed through the swinging doors, back into the dining room's soft golden light. 7 years of working in high-end restaurants had taught her the art of invisibility, how to glide between tables without disturbing conversations, how to anticipate needs without being noticed, how to smile through exhaustion. As she delivered the check to table 7, her eyes drifted involuntarily to table 19 by the window. He was there again, the quiet man who came alone every Thursday, always requested the same table, and left generous tips without fanfare. Unlike the other wealthy patrons who treated staff like furniture, he made eye contact when he ordered, remembered her name, and seemed to notice the small touches she added to his service. Tonight, he wore what she privately called his stealth wealth outfit. Expensive pieces deliberately understated, a cashmere sweater over a crisp white shirt, tailored trousers, and a watch worth more than her annual salary, partially hidden beneath his cuff. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hand through it in thought. What struck her most was how he seemed content in his solitude, reading actual books instead of staring at a phone. Sometimes she wondered what his story was, why someone who could clearly afford to dine anywhere chose to eat alone at the same table week after week. Her phone vibrated again. Another text from Tyler. Emma's father rented out the Belvedere ballroom. It'll be quite the event. The implied comparison stung. Here she was, 30 years old, still serving tables, while her ex celebrated his perfect life with his perfect fiancé in a perfect ballroom. The thought of walking in alone, of the pitying glances and condescending questions about her career progress, made her stomach clench. By the time her shift ended at 11 p.m., the dining room had emptied except for the man at table 19, who lingered over an espresso. Eliza counted her tips in the back room, changed out of her uniform into jeans and a simple blouse, and headed toward the exit. She paused at the bar, where Marcus, the bartender, was cleaning glasses. "Rough night?" he asked, noting her expression. "My ex is getting married," she said flatly, "and I've been invited to witness the spectacle." Marcus winced sympathetically. "Going solo to an ex's wedding? That's cold. I can't not go. It would look like I'm not over him. So bring someone. Make him jealous." Eliza laughed bitterly. "Right. I'll just conjure up a successful, handsome date from thin air." As she turned to leave, her gaze fell on the man at table 19, who was now settling his bill. Something reckless and desperate crystallized in her mind, a wild, impossible idea. Before she could talk herself out of it, Eliza approached his table, up close, She noticed details she'd missed before. The faint lines around his eyes suggesting he smiled often, the elegant strength in his hands, as he signed the check. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm sorry to bother you." He looked up, surprised but not displeased. "Yes. This is completely inappropriate, and you can absolutely say no, but—" She took a deep breath. "My ex is getting married next weekend, and I can't face going alone. Would you consider pretending to be my husband, just for one evening?" The moment the words left her mouth, Eliza wanted to disappear. What was she thinking? Propositioning a customer. She'd be fired on the spot if Sergio overheard. The man studied her for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable. Then, to her astonishment, his lips curved into a smile that transformed his entire face. "An interesting proposition," he said, his voice surprisingly warm. "Why me? You're kind to the staff. You seem decent. And no one here knows you, so it wouldn't get back to my coworkers." She swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. This was completely out of line. I'll do it." Eliza blinked. "You will?" "On one condition." His eyes held hers steadily. "Tell me your name, your full name." "Eliza Matthews." He extended his hand. "Julian Reed." As their hands touched, Eliza felt a strange current pass between them, unaware that she had just asked the billionaire owner of Luminous Hospitality Group, the very company that signed her paychecks, to be her fake husband. The Belvedere ballroom gleamed with crystal chandeliers and white orchid centerpieces as Eliza stepped through its grand entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her black cocktail dress, the most expensive item in her closet, suddenly felt inadequate amid the designer gowns surrounding her. "Breathe," Julian murmured, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. "Remember, everyone here is wondering who you brought." In the week since her impulsive request, Julian had been meticulous about their arrangement. He'd asked questions about Tyler, memorized details about her life, and even suggested they arrive in a car that would make an impression without seeming ostentatious. The sleek Aston Martin that had collected her from her walk-up apartment had certainly achieved that goal. "There's Tyler," Eliza whispered, nodding toward a tall man in a tailored suit, his arm wrapped possessively around a slender blonde in ivory silk. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly as he assessed her ex. "The one who thought you lacked ambition. The very same." "Well then," Julian said, his voice dropping to a tone that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Let's show him what he missed." With that, Julian transformed. The quiet, reserved man from the restaurant vanished, replaced by someone whose entire being seemed oriented around Eliza. He guided her through the room, with the practiced ease of someone who navigated high society gatherings regularly, his fingers intertwined with hers. When they approached Tyler and Emma to offer congratulations, Julian played his role flawlessly. He stood slightly behind Eliza, his posture protective without being possessive, his smile warm as he introduced himself. "Julian Reed," he said, extending his hand to Tyler, "Eliza's husband." Tyler's eyes widened, darting between them. "Husband? I didn't know you were married, Eliza." "It was a small ceremony," Julian answered before she could, his arm sliding around her waist. "Just family at our place in the Berkshires." Eliza wanted something intimate. "The Berkshires?" Emma's interest visibly piqued. "You have a home there?" "Just a cottage," Julian replied modestly. "Nothing like this spectacular venue. Congratulations on your wedding." As they moved away, Eliza felt Tyler's eyes following them. "You're remarkably good at this," she whispered. Julian's lips quirked. "I've had practice navigating uncomfortable social situations." Throughout dinner, Julian maintained the illusion with a dedication that left Eliza breathless. He pulled out her chair, refilled her water before she asked, and listened attentively when she spoke. When the conversation turned to careers, he seamlessly mentioned her dream of opening a café-bookstore, as if it were an established fact rather than a private fantasy she'd never shared with him. "Eliza has the most extraordinary eye for creating spaces where people feel at home," he told the table, his gaze warm as it rested on her. "It's one of the first things that drew me to her." By the time the dancing began, whispers followed them across the ballroom. Eliza caught fragments. Speculation about the handsome stranger who seemed utterly devoted to the ex-girlfriend everyone remembered as sweet but going nowhere. When Julian led her onto the dance floor, his hand at her waist felt like the most natural thing in the world. He moved with the confidence of someone who'd had formal training, guiding her through the steps without making her feel inadequate. "Everyone's watching us," she murmured. "They're watching you," he corrected softly, "as they should be." For a moment, Eliza forgot this was pretend. The warmth in Julian's eyes, the gentle pressure of his hand against hers. It felt real, as if they truly were a couple, celebrating another couple's happiness without envy. Then came the shattering of the illusion. Julian Reed. A silver-haired man approached them, his expression incredulous. "I thought that was you. Didn't expect to see Manhattan's most elusive billionaire at a wedding in Connecticut." Eliza froze, her body suddenly rigid in Julian's arms. "Richard," Julian acknowledged with a tight smile. "Good to see you." "You must be Mrs. Reed," the man said, turning to Eliza. "I've told Julian for years he needed someone to balance that workaholic streak." The man practically lives at Luminous headquarters. Luminous, the parent company that owned the Luminary, her employer. "If you'll excuse us," Julian said smoothly. "I promised my wife the next dance." He guided her away, but the damage was done. Eliza's mind raced, connecting dots she should have seen before. The way the staff always gave him the best table without question, his familiarity with the menu, the respect bordering on deference from the restaurant manager. "You own the Luminary," she said flatly when they reached a quiet corner. "You're my boss." Julian's expression tightened. "Technically, I own the company that owns the Luminary, and several hundred other restaurants. You let me beg you to pretend to be my husband when you could have fired me for approaching you. I would never." "Take me home," she cut him off, her voice trembling. "Now." The drive back to her apartment was excruciating. Julian attempted conversation several times, but Eliza stared out the window, humiliation burning through her veins. When they finally reached her building, she opened the car door before he could come around to help her. "Thank you for the evening," she said formally. "I apologize for putting you in an awkward position. Eliza, please." But she was already walking away, her dignity in tatters, certain she would need to find a new job by morning. The insistent knocking woke Eliza from a fitful sleep. Sunlight streamed through her thin curtains. As she stumbled to the door of her one-bedroom apartment, expecting her neighbor, complaining about the radiator again. Instead, Julian Reed stood in her hallway, holding 2 coffee cups and a paper bag that smelled of fresh pastries. He'd exchanged last night's formal attire for dark jeans and a gray Henley that somehow made him look both more approachable and more intimidating. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Eliza's first instinct was to slam the door. Her second was to straighten her oversized sleep shirt and run a hand through her tangled hair. She did neither, simply stepping back to let him enter. Her apartment, with its mismatched furniture and walls, decorated with postcards and prints she'd collected over the years, suddenly felt painfully small. Julian surveyed the space with interest rather than judgment, which somehow made it worse. "I brought breakfast," he said, setting the coffee and bag on her small kitchen counter, "and an explanation." "You don't owe me an explanation," Eliza replied, accepting the coffee he offered. "I'm the one who put you in an uncomfortable position. On the contrary." Julian leaned against the counter, his posture deliberately casual. "I should have told you who I was immediately. Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "Because for once, someone wasn't looking at me and seeing dollar signs or business opportunities. You saw a person who might help you, not a billionaire to impress or manipulate." The honesty in his voice made Eliza look at him, really look at him, for the first time since discovering his identity. Despite his obvious wealth and power, there was something almost vulnerable in his expression. "Why come here now?" she asked. "If you're worried, I'll tell people about last night." "I'm not here about that." Julian straightened. "I'm here to offer you a proposal." Eliza raised an eyebrow, another one. The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. "A counter-proposal, if you will." He gestured toward her small couch. "May I?" They sat at opposite ends of the sofa, the cushion between them like a demilitarized zone. My family, Julian began, is one of those old money dynasties where business and bloodlines are inextricably linked. My mother sits on the board of Luminous and has spent the last decade trying to arrange a suitable marriage for me, preferably to the daughter of one of our business associates. And this concerns me because next weekend is the annual Reed family gathering at our estate in the Hamptons. Mother has invited the Harringtons and their daughter Charlotte. A not-so-subtle matchmaking attempt. He met her eyes directly. I want you to come with me, as my wife. Eliza nearly choked on her coffee. You can't be serious. Entirely serious. One weekend of pretending to be married. Just like you asked of me. The difference is, I'm offering compensation. You want to pay me to pretend to be your wife? Eliza stood abruptly. That's not what you think, Julian interrupted, rising as well. I'm offering you the financial freedom to pursue your dream. The café-bookstore you mentioned to our table last night. Was that real? Eliza hesitated. Yes, but how did you know to mention it? I never told you about that. You have 3 different books on café management hidden behind your fiction collection at work, and you sketch floor plans on napkins during your breaks. At her surprised look, he added, I notice things about people who interest me. The implication that she interested him sent an unexpected warmth through her chest, which she quickly suppressed. So what exactly are you proposing? One weekend pretending to be my wife. In return, I'll provide the capital you need to open your cafe. No strings attached, no repayment required. Eliza crossed her arms. And what would this performance entail? Nothing inappropriate, Julian assured her. We'd share a suite, but I'd take the couch. We'd attend family dinners, a charity gala, perhaps a sailing excursion, basic couple activities. Why me? Surely you could hire a professional actress. Julian's expression softened. Because you stood up to me last night when you discovered who I was. You weren't intimidated by my name or my money. That's exactly what I need to convince my family. This is real. Eliza knew she should refuse immediately. This arrangement crossed every professional boundary imaginable. Yet the thought of financial independence, of finally having her own business instead of serving others, was intoxicating. I'll need time to think about it, she said finally. Julian nodded, placing a business card on her coffee table. Take all the time you need. But the gathering is next Friday. After he left, Eliza stared at the card for a long time, wondering if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or the decision that would finally set her free. First date? Julian asked, sliding into the booth across from Eliza at a hidden gem of a restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place only locals knew about, with mismatched vintage chairs and handwritten menus. Coffee shop near Washington Square Park, Eliza replied, playing along with their rehearsal. You were reading Kazuo Ishiguro and spilled your latte when I bumped your table. Julian smiled, appreciating her quick imagination. And I asked for your number to pay for dry cleaning. No, Eliza corrected, warming to the story. You offered to buy me another coffee since I'd spilled mine too. We talked about books for 3 hours. It was Tuesday evening, 4 days since she'd accepted his proposal. After her initial shock had worn off, pragmatism had won out. The opportunity to secure her future outweighed her pride. Besides, it was just one weekend. What could possibly happen? The waiter brought their appetizers, delicate plates of food Eliza couldn't pronounce, but that melted in her mouth. This was their 3rd rehearsal, each in a different setting. First a quiet walk through Central Park, discussing their backstory, then a brief shopping excursion for appropriate Hamptons attire. And now this intimate dinner to practice being comfortable in each other's presence. How did I propose? Julian asked, refilling her wine glass. Eliza considered. Nothing flashy. You're not the type for public spectacles. No. No, you proposed at home after cooking dinner. Simple but meaningful. Something flickered in Julian's eyes, surprise, perhaps, that she'd read him so accurately. And the wedding. Small ceremony in the Berkshires, like you told Tyler. Just family and close friends. She twisted the simple platinum band Julian had given her for their charade. No diamond because I work with my hands and would worry about losing it. Julian nodded approvingly. You're good at this. Years of customer service. Eliza replied with a self-deprecating smile. You learn to read people. Anticipate what they want to hear. Is that what you're doing with me? Telling me what I want to hear? The question caught her off guard. I don't know what you want to hear. Julian leaned forward slightly. The truth. Always the truth between us. Even if everything else is fiction. Something shifted in the air between them. A new tension. Neither uncomfortable, nor entirely innocent. Their rehearsals continued throughout the week. Thursday found them in Julian's penthouse apartment. A stunning space of clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Unlike the cold, sterile luxury Eliza had expected, his home contained unexpected warmth. Shelves overflowing with books, a well-used kitchen, photographs of landscapes, rather than business accomplishments. These are beautiful, she said, examining a series of black and white photos on his wall. Did you take them? Julian nodded, joining her. Photography is my escape. No one expecting anything. No decisions affecting thousands of employees. Just me and the light. They're lonely, she observed softly, studying an image of an empty rowboat on a misty lake. Instead of being offended, Julian seemed impressed by her perception. Most people see the technical aspects or compliment the composition. You see the emotion. That's what makes a good cafe, Eliza replied without thinking. Understanding the feeling people are seeking when they walk through your door. Tell me about your dream cafe, Julian said, guiding her to his couch. The real version, not the rehearsal one. To her surprise, Eliza found herself opening up, describing the warm lighting, the mix of communal tables and private nooks, the carefully curated book collection organized by mood rather than genre. Julian listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite attention. It would be a sanctuary, she concluded. Somewhere people feel both connected and protected. Like you've never had, Julian observed quietly. The accuracy of his insight startled her. Before she could respond, Julian's hand brushed hers as he reached for his water glass. The brief contact sent an unexpected current through her skin. Their final rehearsal took place in her apartment, the night before they were to leave for the Hamptons. Julian had brought dinner from an Italian restaurant she'd once mentioned loving, and they sat at her small kitchen table, reviewing details about his family. My mother, Victoria, will be the most skeptical, he warned. She has an uncanny ability to detect insincerity. Then we won't be insincere, Eliza replied. We'll just redirect the truth. Julian's eyebrow rose. Meaning, when I look at you like I admire you, that's real. I do admire your business acumen. When you touch my hand, you're genuinely concerned I'm comfortable in an unfamiliar situation. She shrugged. We're playing roles, but we can fill them with authentic emotions. Later, as Julian prepared to leave, he paused at her door. Are you sure about tomorrow? It's not too late to back out. Eliza met his gaze steadily. I'm sure. What neither acknowledged was the growing awareness that their carefully constructed boundaries were already beginning to blur, rehearsal becoming reality in ways neither had anticipated. The Reed family estate, sprawled across 5 manicured acres, overlooking the Atlantic, its weathered shingles and white trim embodying old money restraint, rather than nouveau-rich ostentation. As Julian's driver navigated the winding driveway, Eliza fought the urge to check her appearance again. Remember, Julian said quietly, you belong here as much as anyone. But from the moment they stepped into the soaring entryway, Eliza felt the weight of scrutiny. Victoria Reed, a slender woman in her 60s, with impeccably styled silver hair and posture that could shame a ballet dancer, assessed Eliza with a single sweep of her cool blue eyes, the same shade as her son's, but lacking his warmth. Julian, Victoria said, air-kissing his cheek. What a surprise you've brought us. Mother, this is my wife, Eliza, Julian replied, his arm sliding protectively around Eliza's waist. I apologize for not sharing our news sooner, but we wanted privacy. Victoria's smile remained fixed as she extended a hand adorned with a single platinum band and a sapphire that caught the light like a captured star. How unexpected. Welcome to our home, Eliza. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Reed, Eliza replied, proud that her voice remained steady. Victoria, please. We're family now, apparently. The emphasis on the last word wasn't lost on either of them. their suite. A generous space with a sitting room, bedroom, and private terrace overlooking the ocean provided temporary refuge, while Julian took a business call. Eliza unpacked her carefully selected wardrobe, each piece chosen to appear tasteful, without trying too hard. "I see Mother has already begun her assessment," Julian remarked when he returned, loosening his tie. "She's protecting her family," Eliza replied, surprising herself with her defense of the woman. "I'd probably do the same if my son appeared with a surprise wife." Julian studied her with newfound appreciation. "Most people just call her a dragon." "Oh, she's definitely that too," Eliza laughed, breaking the tension. Dinner that evening was an exercise in subtle warfare. The dining room, with its Chippendale furniture and ancestral portraits, hosted 12 guests, including the Harringtons, and their daughter Charlotte, a willowy blonde, whose perfect manners couldn't quite mask her confusion at Julian's unexpected marital status. Victoria orchestrated the evening with precision, seating Eliza between Julian's cousin Philip, a finance executive who spoke exclusively about his yacht, and an elderly aunt who was hard of hearing. Julian sat directly across from her, flanked by Charlotte and a female museum curator, whose hand lingered on his arm when she laughed. "So, Eliza," Victoria called from the head of the table during the second course, effectively silencing all other conversations. "Julian tells us you're in the hospitality industry." The phrasing, technically accurate but deliberately misleading, made Eliza's spine stiffen. "Yes," she replied evenly. "I've worked in restaurants for several years." "How fascinating," Victoria continued. "In management, I assume." Before Eliza could answer, Julian intervened. "Eliza has a remarkable understanding of what makes people feel welcome, a quality many of our highest-paid executives lack entirely." "Indeed," Victoria smiled thinly. "And where did you study, dear?" "Community college," Eliza replied honestly. "I worked full-time while earning my associate's degree." A brief silence fell over the table, the kind that acknowledged something faintly distasteful had been mentioned in polite company. "How admirable," Charlotte's mother finally offered. Such determination. Throughout the meal, Victoria continued her delicate offensive. Questions about Eliza's family, her father unknown, her mother working 2 jobs, her neighborhood, her future plans. With each question, Julian's jaw tightened, though his expression remained pleasant. When Victoria mentioned the charity gala the following evening, "Such a shame your dress from Paris hasn't arrived, Eliza. Perhaps Charlotte could lend you something suitable." Julian finally broke. "Eliza's wardrobe is perfect, Mother," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "In fact, she has better taste than most of the women who've been shopping on Madison Avenue their entire lives." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. "I was merely trying to help, Julian. After all, these events have certain expectations." "The only expectation that matters is mine," Julian replied, his gaze fixed on his mother. "And I expect my wife to be treated with the respect she deserves." The tension vibrated through the room like a plucked string. Eliza, feeling both grateful for his defense and uncomfortable being its subject, gently redirected the conversation by asking Philip about recent sailing conditions, a topic that successfully occupied the table through dessert. Later, as guests dispersed for digestives in the library, Victoria cornered Eliza in a quiet hallway. "I don't know what your arrangement with my son entails," she said without preamble, "but Julian has responsibilities beyond whatever infatuation this represents." "With all due respect, Victoria," Eliza replied, her heart pounding but her voice steady, "your son is a grown man capable of making his own choices." "Well, his choices have implications beyond his personal satisfaction." Before Eliza could respond, Julian appeared behind them, his expression darkening as he assessed the situation. Without hesitation, he moved to Eliza's side, his hand finding the small of her back. "Everything all right?" he asked, though his eyes never left his mother's face. "Perfectly fine," Victoria replied smoothly. "I was just getting to know my new daughter-in-law." "Wonderful," Julian said, his tone making it clear he didn't believe her. "If you'll excuse us, it's been a long day." As they walked away, Eliza felt Victoria's gaze boring into her back. When they turned the corner, Julian pulled her into an alcove, his expression concerned. What did she say to you? Nothing I couldn't handle, Eliza assured him. Julian's eyes searched hers. I'm sorry. I knew she'd be difficult, but... Julian, Eliza interrupted gently. I grew up with people looking down on me. Your mother isn't the first person to think I'm not good enough. Something fierce and protective flashed across Julian's face. Before Eliza could process it, he leaned down and caught her lips with his. A kiss that started as comfort, but quickly transformed into something else entirely. His hand cradled her face with unexpected tenderness as he deepened the kiss, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, the realization hit them simultaneously. No one had been watching. There had been no audience to perform for. No reason for the kiss, except the overwhelming need to connect. Julian stepped back slightly, his eyes wide with something that looked remarkably like fear. I'm sorry, he said, his usual composure shattered. That wasn't part of our agreement. Eliza touched her lips, still warm from his. No, she agreed softly. It wasn't. The line between pretense and reality had just been irrevocably crossed, and neither knew how to find their way back. The morning after the kiss, Julian was gone when Eliza woke. A handwritten note on the nightstand explained he had an urgent business matter to handle in the city. The Hamptons charity gala would proceed without them. He'd make their excuses. They would return to Manhattan that afternoon. The carefully crafted script they'd been following had been abandoned without warning. During the silent car ride back to the city, Julian maintained a polite but unmistakable distance. He answered her questions with brief, professional responses, his attention fixed on his laptop or phone. The man who had kissed her with such unexpected passion had vanished, replaced by the cool, controlled CEO, whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines. I'll have my assistant transfer the agreed-upon funds to your account by morning, he said as they approached her apartment building, the first mention of their arrangement since leaving the Hamptons. Julian, Eliza began, about last night. A momentary lapse, he interrupted, not meeting her eyes. The pressure of the situation. The confrontation with my mother. It won't happen again. The dismissal stung more than it should have. Right, of course. When the car stopped, Julian finally looked at her, his expression carefully neutral. Thank you for your assistance this weekend. I hope the capital helps with your cafe. The formal goodbye felt like a door slamming shut. Eliza stepped onto the sidewalk, watching as the car pulled away without Julian looking back. The promised money appeared in her account the next morning, a sum so substantial it made her dizzy when she checked her balance. Along with it came an email from Julian's assistant. Ms. Matthews, Mr. Reed has arranged for a business consultant to contact you regarding your cafe venture. Please find attached a list of available commercial properties that might suit your needs. Regards, Andrea Simmons, executive assistant to Julian Reed. No personal message. No acknowledgement of the moment they'd shared. Just a clinical completion of their transaction. Over the following weeks, Eliza threw herself into research, meeting with the consultant, touring spaces, and developing a business plan. The work provided distraction from the hollow feeling that had settled in her chest. A feeling she refused to acknowledge as heartbreak. After all, how could you have your heart broken by something that was never real? She gave notice at the Luminary, unable to bear the thought of Julian appearing at table 19 again. Her manager accepted her resignation with raised eyebrows, mentioning that Mr. Reed himself had stopped coming to the restaurant. 3 months after their weekend in the Hamptons, Eliza signed a lease on a charming storefront in Park Slope. The space had character, exposed brick walls, tall windows that flooded the room with morning light, wooden floors worn smooth by decades of footsteps. It was smaller than she'd initially envisioned, but perfect in its imperfections. As she stood in the empty space, keys in hand, Eliza should have felt triumphant. Instead, she found herself wishing Julian could see it, could understand that his investment wasn't just about money, but about creating something meaningful. The renovation began, transforming the empty shell into the café-bookstore she'd imagined for so long. Eliza worked alongside the contractors, painting walls, selecting fixtures, arranging for custom bookshelves to be built. Every decision was hers alone, Yet she often caught herself wondering what Julian would think of her choices. One evening, exhausted from a day of overseeing electrical work, Eliza sat on the floor of the half-finished space, surrounded by paint samples and fabric swatches. Her phone chimed with a text from Tyler. Her ex had been reaching out since the wedding, his messages growing increasingly personal. "Having drinks with some friends tonight near your new place. Join us." Eliza stared at the message, tempted by the simple comfort of familiar company. Tyler was safe. The opposite of the whirlwind that had been Julian Reed. Perhaps that was what she needed now. Predictability, stability. Someone whose kiss wouldn't leave her confused and aching. She texted back her acceptance before she could change her mind. Later that night, as she changed into a simple dress for drinks, Eliza caught herself in the mirror. The woman who stared back looked different somehow. More confident, more determined, yet carrying a sadness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. It was just business, she told her reflection firmly. A transaction, nothing more. But as she grabbed her purse and headed out to meet Tyler, the platinum band Julian had given her for their charade caught her eye from its place in her jewelry box. She'd meant to sell it, to add the money to her cafe budget. But something had stopped her each time she considered it. Some pretenses, it seemed, were harder to abandon than others. "Eliza, over here." Tyler waved from a corner table at Meridian, a trendy bar just 3 blocks from her soon-to-open cafe. His smile was familiar, the same one that had once made her heart skip, now producing only a mild nostalgia. "You look amazing." Rising to kiss her cheek. "Success suits you." The compliment felt good after months of dusty renovation work and sleepless nights worrying about permits. Tyler introduced his friends, 2 couples from his law firm, before they excused themselves to the dance floor, leaving them alone. "So," Tyler leaned forward, "a café-bookstore owner. Who would have thought?" "Not you, apparently," Eliza replied, the words sharper than intended. Tyler had the grace to look embarrassed. "I deserved that. I was an ass, Eliza. I got caught up in what I thought success should look like. And now I realize what I gave up." His hand moved to cover hers on the table. "Emma and I called off the engagement." Eliza blinked, processing this information. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It made me see things clearly." His thumb traced circles on her wrist, including who I really want. 6 months ago. Those words might have validated everything Eliza had felt when Tyler left. Now, they just made her uncomfortable. She gently withdrew her hand. "Tyler, I'm in a different place now." Because of the mysterious husband from the wedding, his tone was light, but his eyes were serious. "Your coworker Marcus told me it wasn't real." Eliza silently cursed Marcus and his loose lips. "It's complicated." "It doesn't have to be," Tyler insisted. "We have history, Liz. We understand each other. Whatever happened with that guy." "His name is Julian," Eliza interrupted. "Julian, then. Whatever happened, it's over, right? You're single, I'm single." He smiled his most persuasive smile. "We could try again. Smarter this time." The offer hung between them, comfortable, safe, a return to the known. Tyler represented a life she understood, with clearly defined expectations and boundaries. No billionaires, no pretending, no kisses that turned her world upside down. "I need to think about it," she finally said. Tyler nodded, accepting her hesitation as encouragement. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time." What Eliza couldn't see, was the figure seated alone at the bar, nursing a scotch he hadn't touched. Julian Reed had been there for 43 minutes, having arrived shortly after receiving a text from his former restaurant manager. "Thought you should know. Eliza's meeting her ex tonight at Meridian." Julian hadn't planned to come. He deleted the message, buried himself in work, then found himself in his car, driven by an impulse he couldn't name. For weeks he'd been fighting the urge to contact her, to see how her cafe was progressing, to explain his abrupt withdrawal after the Hamptons. Pride had won each time, until tonight, when the thought of her reconnecting with the man who had once hurt her proved stronger than his carefully constructed walls. From his vantage point, Julian watched their interaction with growing dread, the easy familiarity between them, Tyler's hand covering hers, the intimate lean of their conversation. They looked right together, matched in age, background, expectations. Unlike the mismatched billionaire and the waitress playing at marriage, when Tyler escorted Eliza outside, Julian left cash on the bar and followed at a distance. He watched as Tyler hailed a cab, saw the moment where Tyler leaned in to kiss her, a brief, testing kiss that she neither returned fully nor rejected entirely. Something cold and heavy settled in Julian's chest as the cab pulled away with both of them inside. Back at his penthouse, Julian poured another scotch he wouldn't drink, staring out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a notification from his restaurant management system. An emergency at the Luminary. Their head chef injured, the evening service in jeopardy. Julian stared at the alert, an idea forming, reckless, impulsive, potentially disastrous, before he could reconsider. He sent a text to the number he'd never deleted from his phone. Emergency at the Luminary. Need your expertise tonight, please. The Luminary hummed with its usual elegant efficiency when Eliza arrived, breathless and concerned. She'd left Tyler at her door with a vague excuse about a work emergency, changing from her dress into jeans and a sweater before rushing to the restaurant. "I'm here to help with the emergency," she told the hostess. "Julian Reed texted me." The hostess looked confused. Emergency. Everything's running smoothly tonight. Before Eliza could process this, Julian appeared from the direction of the kitchen, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that made her heart stutter, despite her growing anger. "Eliza, thank you for coming. There's no emergency, is there?" she asked flatly. Julian had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Could we speak privately?" He led her to the small office behind the kitchen, a space she'd never entered during her time working there. Once the door closed, Eliza rounded on him. "You lied to get me here. Why?" Julian ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I saw you with him tonight." "Your ex." Eliza froze. "You were following me." "No, yes, it wasn't planned." Julian's usual eloquence had abandoned him. "I heard you were meeting him. I couldn't stay away." "So you spied on me, then fabricated an emergency to interrupt my evening." Eliza's voice rose with each word. "What gave you the right?" "Nothing," Julian admitted. "It was impulsive and inappropriate. Like kissing me and then disappearing for 3 months." The hurt she'd been suppressing finally broke through. "You don't get to drop in and out of my life when it's convenient, Julian. I'm not one of your businesses you can manage from a distance." Julian stepped closer, his expression pained. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "Because from where I stand, you used me to keep your mother at bay, paid me off, and vanished until you saw me with someone else." "I was trying to protect you," Julian said quietly. "From what?" "From me." The raw honesty in his voice stopped her. "From what happens to people in my orbit. They become acquisitions, assets, extensions of the Reed name." "I never asked for your protection," Eliza countered. "I asked for your honesty." Julian's composure cracked further. "The truth. Fine. I've thought about you every day for 3 months. I've driven by your cafe site weekly to see the progress. I've drafted a dozen messages I never sent because I was terrified of dragging you into my world. And seeing me with Tyler tonight, it felt like watching something precious slip away." His voice dropped to nearly a whisper. I panicked. The confession hung between them, stripping away the last pretenses. Eliza studied him, the shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the vulnerability he couldn't quite hide. "Say it, Julian. Whatever this is between us, whatever you're feeling, say it plainly." Julian swallowed hard. "I'm in love with you, Eliza. I have been since long before our arrangement." The words she'd both longed for and dreaded washed over her. Yet instead of joy, Eliza felt a profound wariness. Words are easy, Julian, especially for someone who negotiates for a living. She straightened her shoulders. "If you truly love me, prove it." "How?" "Show me you understand who I am, not who you think I should be or who fits conveniently into your life. Show me you see me." She moved toward the door. "You have 24 hours. And if I can't convince you..." Eliza's hand paused on the doorknob. "Then we both move on, for real this time." She left without looking back, her heart pounding with the audacity of her ultimatum. She just challenged one of the most powerful men in New York to prove his love. A man who could buy anything, influence anyone. But what Eliza needed couldn't be purchased. It required something Julian Reed might not be capable of giving: the willingness to see her world as equal to his own. As she walked home through the quiet streets, Eliza wondered if she'd just closed the door on whatever had been growing between them, or if she'd finally opened it properly. The package arrived exactly 23 hours and 42 minutes after Eliza's ultimatum. She'd spent the day at her cafe, losing herself in the final preparations for next week's soft opening. The countertops had been installed. The espresso machine was being calibrated, and the bookshelves were ready for their carefully curated collection. Everything was coming together. Everything except the hollow space in her chest that no amount of achievement seemed to fill. The courier required her signature for the large manila envelope. Inside, she found architectural plans, legal documents, and a handwritten letter. Her hands trembled as she spread the contents across her new counter. The architectural drawings showed her cafe, not as it was, but as it could be. The plans maintained everything she'd created while subtly enhancing the space. A reading loft accessed by a spiral staircase, custom lighting that could be adjusted throughout the day. A small garden patio out back that she hadn't even realized was possible. The legal documents included approved permits for the additions, a revised business license, and, most shocking, the deed to the building itself, transferred to her name alone. The letter, written in Julian's decisive hand, was the last thing she unfolded. Eliza, you asked me to prove that I see you, not as an investment or a convenient solution, but as the remarkable woman you are. I've spent the night thinking about what that means, not what I could buy you or where I could take you, but what would truly matter to someone who values independence and creation above all else. These plans are based entirely on notes I took while you described your dream. The additions require no demolition of what you've already built. They merely expand the possibilities. The permits are approved, but not activated. The deed is in your name, regardless of your decision about us. This isn't about owning your dream or controlling it. It's about removing the limitations that might constrain it. The choice to use these plans, to accept this gift, remains entirely yours, as does the choice about whether I have a place in your life. I don't want to drag you into my world, Eliza. I want the privilege of being part of yours. Yours. Julian Eliza read the letter 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. The plans weren't a takeover of her vision. They were an enhancement that somehow captured exactly what she would have created with unlimited resources. He had listened, truly listened, to everything she'd said about her dream. Her phone buzzed with a text. Time's almost up. May I see you? 20 minutes later, Julian stood in her cafe, looking both powerful and uncertain in jeans and a simple sweater, an echo of how she'd first seen him at the Luminary. You bought my building, she said without preamble. I transferred ownership of your building, Julian corrected. There's a difference. Eliza gestured to the plans spread across the counter. And these? Suggestions only. Your vision. Just with fewer practical constraints. Why not just give me money? It would have been simpler. Julian stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. Because you don't need my money, Eliza. You need someone who understands that this, he gestured around the cafe, isn't just a business to you. It's your sanctuary, your statement to the world. The accuracy of his understanding left her momentarily speechless. I've spent my life accumulating power, Julian continued softly. But you've shown me something far more valuable. The courage to create something authentic. Something that reflects who you truly are. And what do you want in return? Eliza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Partnership. Julian's voice caught on the word. Not ownership, not control, true partnership. In whatever form you'll allow. Eliza studied him, the vulnerability in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders as he awaited her verdict. This wasn't the controlled CEO or the billionaire playing a role. This was simply Julian, offering himself without pretense. I have conditions, she said finally. A smile tugged at his lips. I expected nothing less. First, this remains my business. Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Julian nodded. Agreed. Second, we take this slowly. No more pretending. No more arrangements. Just 2 people figuring out what's real. That's all I want, Julian assured her. Eliza took a deep breath. And third, most importantly, We're equals in this relationship. Your world doesn't outrank mine. Your priorities don't automatically take precedence. Instead of looking offended, Julian seemed relieved. I've had enough of hierarchies to last a lifetime, Eliza. Equality sounds revolutionary. The word hung between them, full of promise. Eliza moved around the counter until she stood directly before him. In that case, Julian Reed, I accept your partnership proposal. His smile, genuine, unguarded, transformed his face. May I kiss you now? No pretending this time. In answer, Eliza rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. A kiss that felt like the beginning of something authentic, something built on truth, rather than convenience. 6 months later, Eliza's café-bookstore, christened Sanctuary, opened to immediate success. The unique space, with its perfect balance of intimacy and openness, quickly became a neighborhood favorite. Few customers realized that the quiet man who sometimes worked at the corner table, occasionally helping shelve books or serve coffee during busy periods, was one of the city's most powerful businessmen. Fewer still knew that when he slipped behind the counter to refill Eliza's coffee before she could ask, or when she straightened his collar without breaking conversation, they were witnessing not the performance of affection, but its genuine expression. On the cafe's first anniversary, Julian proposed, not with a spectacular gesture, but with a simple question asked on the rooftop garden they'd built together, the ring, a vintage piece chosen for its story, rather than its price. Eliza said yes to the man who had learned to see her, truly see her, as she was, not a waitress to be rescued or a partner to be acquired, but a woman whose world was every bit as meaningful as his own. Their wedding was small, intimate, and entirely real. No pretending required.